I had barely turned the corner onto Sycamore Lane when my moving truck screeched to a halt, not because of traffic, but because a woman with her arms crossed, sunglasses on, and a sour little smirk had planted herself right in the middle of the road. That was the first moment I realized I wasn't just moving into a house, I was stepping into a war zone. And before the sun went down that same day, I'd be standing with a county sheriff just to legally access my own driveway. That's how my nightmare with the HOA president, Deborah Whitmore, began. I'm Jackson Jarrett, 39 years old, paramedic by trade, the guy who's been through car pileups, fire rescues, even deployment zones overseas. I thought I knew chaos, thought I'd earned a quiet life when I bought this house outright, no mortgage, no landlord, just me, my dog, radar, and a fresh start. But nothing, and I mean nothing, had prepared me for Deborah. She wasn't just a neighbor. She was the self-declared queen of the cul-de-sac, the type of HOA president who thought a clipboard gave her more authority than the sheriff's badge itself. Picture this. I roll up with my buddy Marco riding shotgun, finally ready to unload years of belongings into a place I could call my own. And there she is, blocking the street with a folding chair, tapping her clipboard like she's TSA, and I forgot my boarding pass. I leaned out the window, polite as I could manage. Hey, I'm moving into 423. Mind stepping aside? She didn't budge. Instead, she quoted HOA bylaws like scripture. Trucks over 20 feet require 72 hours notice to the board. I laughed. It's not parked, it's moving. Moving in. She stared me down and snapped a photo like she was building a case file. My blood pressure spiked. Look, Deborah, I've got the deed. I've got utility hookups. I've even got city permits. You're not blocking me from entering my own property. Her answer, oh, I absolutely am. That's when I made my first call to the sheriff. And when Sheriff Atkins pulled up, he took one look at her side and said, my new favorite line. Deborah, the HOA doesn't own the roads. Step aside before I cite you for obstruction. Her face turned beet red. I swear steam came out her ears. But she moved barely just enough for me to drive past while she shouted about disrupting the aesthetic. I should have felt relief in that moment, but I didn't. Because I saw it in her eyes, this wasn't over. The next morning, radar growled low at the front door. I opened it to find neon orange flyers plastered across the wood like someone had tried to gift wrap my house. Notice of non-compliance. Unauthorized move-in, pending disciplinary review. Deborah's signature stamped at the bottom like she was signing a presidential veto. Every car windshield on the block had one too. That's how I met Reggie, the neighbor across the street, who shook his head and said, "You're not her first victim. Last guy lasted 6 months. My gut dropped. 6 months, over a basketball hoop, over babysitting. I felt like I'd stepped into a bad sitcom, except it was my life. My money, my home. Reggie smirked, though. Difference is, you called the sheriff. You might just be the one to take her down. I wasn't sure whether to feel encouraged or terrified. From that day forward, I documented everything. Every flyer, every letter, every weird HOA notice slid under my door. I installed cameras front porch driveway, even the back gate. Some folks would call it paranoia. I called it survival. Because people like Deborah didn't back down. They escalated, and escalate she did. 3 days later, a tow truck crept down the street driver with clipboard in hand here to haul off my Ford F-150. Claimed it had been reported as abandoned and leaking fluids. I revved the engine right there, clean as a whistle. Want to check for yourself? The driver shrugged. Hey man, I just go where they send me. Name on the report, Deborah Whitmore. Radar barked like he understood exactly who was behind it. I photographed the slip, sent the guy packing, and realized this wasn't a petty feud anymore. This was warfare. So I dug deeper. With a favor from a buddy, I pulled Deborah's history. And what do you know, 2 counties over, she'd been removed from another HOA for gross mismanagement of funds. 30 grand gone, vanished into thin air. She blamed lightning for wiping her laptop. Lightning. I printed every record, every article, every resignation letter, stuffed it into a folder I labeled Her Majesty. Then I walked into the monthly HOA meeting like I was walking into enemy territory. The clubhouse smelled of lemon polish and stale carpet. Deborah sat at the head of the table, flanked by 4 other board members, clipboard front and center like it was a gavel. She sneered the moment she saw me. "This is a closed meeting." I quoted her own bylaws back at her. "Any homeowner can attend unless it's executive session. This isn't, so I'm staying." She choked on that one, but she regained her footing, quick motioning for formal penalties against me. I raised my hand. "You're not recognized," she snapped. That's when I slid the manila envelope down the table. Carol, one of the board members, opened it, and her eyebrows shot up higher with each page. "Is this true?" she asked. Deborah sputtered. "That was years ago, a misunderstanding." I leaned forward. "It has everything to do with this community. You've already run one homeowner out. Now you're harassing another, and you've got a record of misusing funds. You need to leave." The room shifted. Deborah hissed, but Carol stood up and motioned to suspend all actions against me pending review. The board seconded. Just like that, Deborah's iron grip cracked. But don't think it was a clean victory. That night I found a letter in my mailbox, no return address, no stamp. Just typed words. "You've made a mistake. Walk away before things get worse." My stomach dropped. For the first time, I sat at my kitchen table, head in my hands, wondering if I was out of my depth. Was I the problem? Was I turning a neighborhood dispute into something uglier than it needed to be? I thought about radar, about what could happen if someone escalated beyond letters and flyers. For a minute, I considered packing up, cutting my losses. 6 months hell, maybe Deborah was right, maybe it wasn't worth it. But then, Carol knocked on my door with Reggie and another board member by her side. They slid a folder across my table. "We found discrepancies," Carol said. $12,000 unaccounted for. Fake vendor invoices all under the threshold that required board votes. The company's name, Pinebrush Solutions. No website, no office, just a P.O. box tied to Deborah's husband. That was the moment my doubt burned off like fog. I wasn't crazy, I wasn't overreacting. I was right. And now I had proof. I compiled everything. Financial records, shell company ties, even the incorporation papers with Maxwell Whitmore's name, and marched it down to the district attorney's office. Assistant D.A. Tyson Ng looked through the stack, his eyes hardening. "We take this seriously. We'll open a formal investigation today." When I walked out of that building, I felt my spine straighten. For once, I wasn't just defending myself. I was holding Deborah accountable. Days later, unmarked cars and a sheriff's cruiser pulled up outside the clubhouse. Deputies filed in and out with boxes, laptops, bank slips, evidence she hadn't even bothered to shred. I stood across the street with neighbors as Deborah came storming out, shouting that this was all a mistake, that she was being targeted. The plainclothes officer handed her papers, subpoena, freezing accounts. She tried to step back inside. 2 deputies blocked the doorway. She wasn't cuffed, but she was escorted out, and the look on her face? The queen of the cul-de-sac dethroned in broad daylight. That evening, the board called an emergency meeting. Neighbors packed the clubhouse tension so thick it buzzed in the air. Carol announced the findings: fraudulent vendors misused funds, and Deborah's family tied to the scheme. The board has voted to terminate her position effective immediately. Gasps, murmurs, then silence. Deborah's kingdom crumbled right there. For the first time, people weren't afraid. They were angry. They were awake. When it was my turn to speak, I kept it short. None of this happened because I'm special. It happened because I didn't back down. You can't fix a place by hoping it gets better. You fix it by showing up. And that was it. Deborah and her husband faced felony charges: fraud, wire fraud, misappropriation of funds. They were barred from setting foot in any HOA-governed community in the county. The sheriff, the DA, the neighbors, they all saw her for what she really was. And I finally stood on my porch, not as a target, not as a victim, but as a homeowner who refused to be run out. Justice doesn't come easy, but it always comes for those who abuse power.